But y'all, we have been in a series on questions. A couple weeks ago, we talked about why. You know, why stuff happens in my life. And we talked about why. And then last week, we talked about when. You understand why, then we want to know, well, when is it going to come? When's my change going to come? And then I thought about it. There are a lot of questions that people have in life. And what most questions boil down to is really, if you really think about it, what's God's will for my life? Isn't that what a lot of y'all want to know? What's God's will for my life? And think about that word, what. What is by definition what? An information request. I want to know something, so I'm asking you what. And right now, if y'all really wanted to find out some odd bit of information, most of y'all would take out y'all phone, if you got a smartphone, and you go to the internet on your phone, right? And then you would go to where, somebody? Yahoo, Google, Bing. But you would go somewhere like that, right? And the reason you go there is because we want to get information. And the bottom line is, we live in an information overload age, if you think about it. But if we want to find out something, that's where we go. And I thought about that. We still can't go to any of those locations to find out what God's will is for our lives. And we just can't. Because there's really only one source to find that out. And so today, when we look at the scripture, primarily we're looking at Romans 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So like in that song we were singing, take my heart. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. But we got to be careful about what we mean by God's will. Because when we start talking about God's will, there are a couple of different wills out there we're dealing with. One thing that you should never get confused when you're trying to figure out what's God's will for your specific life, and you're trying to test it and see if it's approved by God, don't confuse his revealed will with your specific will. What I mean by his revealed will is God's got a Bible. And there he has revealed his will about certain things. So if you come up to me and say, Reverend Henley, my wife just so evil. My husband just so mean. I just can't stand him. He just cruel. Now he don't hit me. She help pay the bills. I just don't like her anymore. And I believe it's God's will for me to be happy and to leave. Because, you know, even though they're doing everything they're supposed to do in the house, I just don't like them anymore. That ain't God's will. Because the revealed will is you stay married. Now, if they beating the H out of you, or they sleeping around, or they doing other things that the Bible gives you a reason to, but it's got to be a biblical reason. It ain't just because you feel. Like there is revealed will, which says that a man marries a woman, and if you come talking about, well, Reverend Henry, I was just born this way, and I just feel that this is God's will for my life, you know what? You ain't in the book. He got a revealed will, but then there's some things, y'all, that's called a specific will for your individual life. God don't really care where you go to high school. He don't care if you go to Murrah. He don't care if you go to Callaway. He don't care if you go to Boonville. Unless, of course, you play basketball. You want to win. No, I'm joking. Because those teams up in northeast Mississippi, like them Biggersvilles and all those teams up there, they win their fair share too. Janice tell them, yo, you a two-time state champ from Jackson, ain't it? That's right. Go ahead, Murrah Mustangs. They ain't did too good since you left one time, right? But they doing all right. But thing is, God doesn't care about that. But what he's talking about in this verse is the revealed will of God we know. But the specific will of God for your particular life, what is that? And that's really what this text is talking about when it starts talking about will. But when we start talking about will, now we clear that up. What Paul does is, it's interesting because he says, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Now, in our mind, when we think about offer, if we got any lawyers in the house, they're probably thinking about the legal definition of an offer. How many of y'all have ever noticed, if you've gone out to buy a car, that you do all the talking, and when you get to do all that talking to buy the car, or if you get ready to buy a house, they then have you reduce in writing the offer that you're going to submit to them. But they write down the numbers that they convinced you to take. But they saying it's your offer. You see what I'm saying? But back then, when they heard the word offer, and Paul said that in their mind, they're going back to the old Levitical system where you would take an animal and you place that animal on the altar, and animals, believe it or not, instinctively know when you finna chop their head off. And so when that animal is right on that table, you think that animal is just sort of laying there, oh, chop my head off, come on down. No, that animal like, got me up. So what they're thinking when they think offer, they're thinking being forcibly held down to be sacrificed. That's what's going through their mind when they hear this statement from him initially. In our minds, we just don't think that way because we're thinking more about our own system. But what I found out is what he's talking about here is an offer that is voluntary. It's an offer that's being submitted because I choose to make the offer. It's a voluntary submission of my will to his will for my life. Something that matches up to what the revealed will of God says. And so